Hello and welcome back to the Nutrition Daddy broadcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mitch Kahn, and we have another exciting video and audio for you today. What we're going to be covering today is the biggest health issue I find with women in my practice, and it's just not my practice, it's many other practices as well. I'd say this is a hugely underdiagnosed problem. This problem is specific more for women than men. Most of the patients that come in with this particular issue are women. We're going to cover the next video about another problem that is mostly for men. But this particular issue is so underdiagnosed that it's horrific. And we'll get into that in more detail right now. So what am I talking about? We're talking about thyroid issues specifically. The thyroid is a Greek word for shield, and the Greeks came up with that because of the bones that are actually in front of the thyroid. And the thyroid is that gland, it's a butterfly-shaped gland that has two lobes, one on each side in your neck in this area. Extremely important, especially for women. And let me tell you a little bit about how I came up with this idea in this video. I was getting a lot of patients and a lot of women who had signs and symptoms of thyroid issues, and they'd come into the office and they'd say, well, you know what, I just had my blood test and my doctor checked my thyroid function and everything came out normal. So apparently it's not my thyroid. And you look at them and they kind of feel like something's not right with this. Like they intuitively know that there is a problem there, but the doctor's telling them there isn't. Well, here's some news for you. These blood tests are hugely ineffective, okay? They're at least 50% not accurate. In other words, between 50 and 70% of the time, these tests do not pick up a thyroid issue. And there's many reasons for that. We're not going to get into that in this video, but it's without a question, it is not a very accurate test. A more accurate test, which you could do yourself, is called the Barnes Basal Metabolic Test, which is, you can Google that and look up how it's done. But Dr. Barnes came up with it. It basically just measures your body temperature in the morning. Like every morning you take your body temperature and it should be within a certain range. And if it's lower than that, then you can be very highly suspicious you have a thyroid issue. I would definitely do that over the blood tests. The blood tests are horrific. Unfortunately, giving a lot of false negatives for the patients that come in and that have this issue. And it is an epidemic, this situation with the thyroid. It's huge. So many women, I'd say 50 to 75% of the women, adult women in this country, have issues with their thyroid. And we're going to get into why that is in a minute. So what are some of the symptoms of a thyroid issue? Well, do you suffer from feeling cold all the time? Like it could be even like 85 degrees out and you feel cold? That's a symptom. Your hands are cold, your feet are cold, your body's cold, you feel chilled. That's a very, very common symptom of a thyroid issue. Okay? And we're going to get into some other issues with thyroid problems. There are quite a few problems that can occur with a thyroid. Let's get into one that's not so common. Women who have discharge that's really thick mucus discharge, whether it's from the nose or the vaginal area, that's often a thyroid issue. Another one that's not quite as commonly known, if you go to a chiropractor and he gives you a treatment, he adjusts you, and you feel like you're in more pain after the adjustment, it could be a thyroid issue. It could very much be a thyroid issue, or it could just be a really rough chiropractor, but you should look into the thyroid. Also, if these muscles in this tissue here near your sternum in the front, if they feel tender, like to the push, they're really tender, that's also an indication of a thyroid issue. There are other issues that are related to thyroid as well. One of them is, do you cry easily? People think you're emotional, like drop of a hat you just start crying. That could be a thyroid issue. And probably the second biggest symptom for thyroid besides the feeling cold is feeling fatigue. Chronic fatigue is often a thyroid issue. You just feel slow and lethargic, and you just don't have the energy. Look toward the thyroid. Now, there could be other glands involved, like the adrenals and other glands, but the thyroid is the single most common issue for women. So I would tend to look at that first. Okay? So what are some of the things that you can do for the thyroid? Well, first of all, exercise is very important because the thyroid is in charge of your metabolism. Oh, by the way, another symptom is obesity. I should have mentioned that earlier. Many women who are overweight and obese have a serious thyroid problem, and that's actually how a lot of my patients have come in. They're overweight. They have almost every symptom that I mentioned. They're fatigued. They just don't have it, and they crave sugar. They need something to get them going. And they have the blood test, and it says their thyroid's fine. And you're looking at them like, honey, you have like every symptom of a thyroid problem. It's the blood test isn't right. And you help, you get them on certain nutritional supplements, change their diet a little bit, and boom, all of a sudden the light bulb goes back on. It's really nice to see. So anyway, some of the treatment for it is, as I just mentioned, there is supplementation. We have some excellent supplements for that. And you can also do things on your own, like eat seaweed type products, kelp type supplements that they sell in health food stores. Use iodine, although I'd be very careful with iodine. Sometimes that makes the thyroid race a little too fast, and it's not actually an iodine issue, so just be a little bit careful with that one. And we're going to talk a little bit about why do so many women have this thyroid issue, and this is going to be a really big surprise too. What we found in practice, and I know there are other practices as well, who have found out that the thyroid, believe it or not, is being affected like this because of heavy metal poisoning. And you're like, wait a minute, I was with you up to here, but what do you mean heavy metal poisoning? Well, let's talk about this for a minute, okay? This is going to be a video for another time. We're going to get more into the subject, but just to scratch the surface a little bit, let's talk a little about that. How many of you have fillings in your mouth? How many of them are mercury or amalgam? I have it too. We've been pretty much duped about the safety of mercury and amalgam. I don't know how much you're aware of this, but this stuff is extremely toxic. And although we've been told for years it's safe, I mean, people in the health field, outside of the medical and dental field have known for years and years just how bad it is. What happens is that metal from your mouth, with gravity's help, goes south. And where does it go next? It ends up in the thyroid area. And it's just detrimental to thyroid function. Just totally screws it up. So a good portion of the patients that come in with thyroid issues also have heavy metal issues, which of course we also treat. Very, very, very common. Definitely more than half of the thyroid issues. Much more than half. Now, there are other issues that can cause thyroid problems as well. It could just be poor diet, bad habits, smoking and drinking and things like that, no exercise whatsoever, although that alone would probably not make your thyroid work so poorly. So there are other issues as well. There are things that could be some types of underlying infections and chemicals in the environment. There are basically 5 factors, and another video will cover specifically into those 5 factors. But generally what I'm telling you here is what's the cause of these thyroid issues. So what do you do? Well, as I mentioned before, exercise. If it's a metal issue, we need to get those metals out, and we need to do it carefully, slowly, so it doesn't overwhelm your body. Okay? The other issues I mentioned can also be handled. Sometimes people, like I said, need more supplementation with iodine and kelp and so forth, more exercise. But the bottom line here is you need to first identify the problem. I feel really bad because so many of these women come in, so many of you who have this issue, and you're just suffering through life for no good reason. I mean, this is not a very difficult thing to handle. This is a health issue that can be handled relatively straightforward with not too many complications at all. And I've helped hundreds of patients myself for this particular issue. So, let me know how you feel about this information. You can always email me at drmitchk@gmail.com, or you can call my office at 845-507-0901, and I really look forward to meeting you and talking to you. Have a great day, and I hope this is really helpful.
I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat